What is up, tubers? T.O. here, Simplistic Fishing, back at you tonight to talk to you a little bit about the THSBA events that we've been fishing in. We've got two in the bag now, so I want to talk to you a little bit about our plan of attack, what's worked for us, what hasn't worked for us, and number one, a huge lesson learned from this recent tournament that we just did down in Richland Chambers. So tonight, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a different video, but I just want to talk to you about it, hopefully show you guys some good spots out there on Fork and Chambers that you guys can take advantage of right now and talk to you about some of the lures that you should be using right now as well to catch those fish. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's talk about it. Let's see what we can come up with. Hopefully, you'll get some benefit out of this one. Here we go. All right, well, let's just go ahead and jump into this one to start off with. We're going to talk about Fork. So the Lake Fork tournament, it was actually on October 1st. So we had really kind of early fall temps, nothing too crazy, nothing too hot, nothing too cold, just kind of steady, kind of into the summer, going into fall temperatures. So that tournament was on October 1st. If you're not familiar with Lake Fork has a slot limit. And what that means is anything under 16 inches you can keep, and anything over 24 inches, you can keep one. And then anything between that range, so 16 to 24, you've got to throw back. So in a tournament, when we get into a tournament like that, it's really tricky because you're not searching for the bigger fish anymore. You're now searching for the smaller fish that are 16 or under. So it definitely changes the way that you approach the lake, the way you fish, and everything. And so if you see any of these pictures from us from social media, stuff like that, when you're seeing Lake Fork and you're like, why are they holding up these little tiny fish for THSBA? That is why. Because of the slot limit to protect the fish. So let's talk about Fork a little bit. Like I said, the temperatures were pretty steady. It was kind of coming out of summer into fall, getting to be pretty good temperatures. And really, when I'm fishing Fork, I like to go up in either Running Creek or Coffee Creek. Those are my two favorite places to fish on Fork. Love fishing around the grass and the hydrilla and stuff like that. That's, to me, is a ton of fun. But in this case, they had just done some service on the dam, so the lake was down, I think, 6.5 or 7 feet when we had the tournament. So the lake was way down. So basically, Coffee and Running Creek, those were completely out because they were too shallow. So then I had to decide, okay, where are we going to fish? So, early fall, we all know that they start pushing bait back into the pockets. So that was the first place that we started to look, was looking in the pockets. So looking on like the first half, maybe the first and second thirds of the pockets. We weren't going all the way back in them, but we were starting at the point and basically working our way back. And we were having some success there with crankbaits, spinner baits, different types of things like that, pretty much all moving baits. Problem was we were catching some pretty decent sized fish doing this. And in that tournament, that's not going to help us if a bunch of the fish you're catching are a bunch of overs. So we were really struggling, going into the Friday before the tournament. We were struggling to say, where are we going to find a group of small fish? Because what we were finding was everything was pretty well scattered. The fish that we were finding in the first thirds and second thirds of the pockets were actually decent sized fish, but we weren't catching enough of them anyways to be confident that we could catch enough of them where we could kind of throw out the good ones, unfortunately, and keep the small ones. We didn't feel like we had a good enough pattern there. So we were a little bit nervous going into Fork on what we were going to do. And on Friday, what we did is we did something totally different than we normally do. And Jason and I, we're the captains. We decided to go together. Actually, the boys decided to go together. So Jason and I were together, and Jackson and Landon were together. And so basically it allowed them to go and find their own spots for the tournament on Saturday. I mean, we already had a few spots picked out that we had pre-fished for, but really, like I was saying, we needed to find more. We need to find something different. And so the plan on Friday was Jason and I would go and stick with kind of the same pattern that we had found and just make sure that that pattern was solid. And then when we did that, Landon and Jackson would be able to go out and see if they could find anything new. So we went out pre-fishing. Our pre-fishing was pretty good from a captain side. I mean, we definitely we caught, I think, 3 or 4 keepers. So we didn't catch enough to even do well in that tournament, but the keepers we caught were actually pretty decent size, and we caught some overs as well. Not overs as far as, I guess I should just say we caught some slot fish. So we caught some of those fish between 16 and 24 inches. So not a bad day. But when we reached out to land and asked them how they did, they went on a totally different pattern. And what they ended up finding was really good because it found groups of fish for us. So it allowed us to go and fish this tournament and set on certain spots as opposed to having to move around a ton, because moving around a ton is what you're supposed to do in the fall. But in this tournament, it was all about finding the group of small fish. And it was hard to do. I can't explain it. It was just hard to find a bunch of little fish. It's like when you really want to find a bunch of little fish, you can't. But then all the other times it's, you can just throw a lure out there and catch a little fish, it seems like. But anyways, so we go on. What they basically found there was they found brush piles. And what they found on those brush piles was if they found a brush pile that was in 12 to 15 feet, that was the key. If it was around 12 feet, you could find a brush pile or some type of big, large piece of cover, and it was close to a point, that was key. Well, they found 3 or 4 of these places during the pre-fishing spot. And so they were very confident that we could go there and we could catch them. And basically what they were doing is they were just using drop shots. They were going down to the smallest stuff that they could throw, and they were really just going for numbers to see how many of those small fish they could catch, and and then just basically call them out until we get the best weight we can of the best 5. And so that actually worked on tournament day. But before I do that, I want to go back and talk a little bit more about another pattern that was working there as well. And this pattern actually carried over into Richland Chambers somewhat. And that pattern was basically just fishing points. So fishing the main lake points. The thing that was unique about Fork in that case, and in that fall transition, was that on these points, one, the fish were super shallow. I'm talking like 2 foot or shallower. So if you were fishing more than 3 or 4 foot deep, you were not catching fish, at least when you were fishing the points. And then the other thing was on these points, they couldn't have any cover on them. So you couldn't have any brush. A lot of times you'll have standing timber out on the points. You couldn't have any standing timber. You couldn't have any rocks. It basically had to be basically do nothing bank line. So just clay, really shallow. If they came out and just kind of gradually went out, those shallow points that were main lake, they were pretty good. They were producing really good. And it was weird how we were catching them. We were catching them on top water a little bit on whopper ploppers. But then we were also catching them on drop shots in like a foot of water. So it was very strange, but that was kind of going to be the pattern we were going to go with until we found these brush piles. We got a little bit deeper, went to 12 to 15 foot. And then that's when they found the brush piles. And that's when we were able to find our fish. So all in all, I'd say, if I were to go out to Fork right now, I would definitely focus on those points. I think any type of moving baits, walking baits, spinner baits, rattle traps, lipless crankbaits, whatever you want to call them, all those are going to be good. The spooks are going to be good as well. And focusing on those main lake points. And then I'm sure you've got a group of fish that are also moving back into those pockets. So you can't deny the pockets. And I'm talking hit bank lines that look like they would do absolutely nothing for you. Hit those bank lines, you'd be surprised at what you can find. So that's just the season that we're in. They're feeding like crazy right now. So you got to get out there and take advantage, because once that water temperature gets below about 55, then it's all over and the feeding frenzy is all done. So we're getting close. We were at 63 degrees this weekend out on Chambers. I don't know what it is on Fork, but that's what it was on Chambers. So anyways, they got 6th place in Fork out of 170 something boats. So I was really proud of them. Definitely keeping their spot for Angler of the Year. So we had a really good start. And the next tournament then was going to be Richland Chambers, which we just finished this weekend on October the 30th. Our pre-fishing for Richland Chambers was amazing. We caught a ton of good fish. You'll see some pictures as I'm talking here, but we caught some big fish. I'm telling you, some really big fish. And we caught them consistently. We went down there 3 or 4 times in a row and just caught 20-pound bags or close to 20-pound bags every single time. And we were super confident going into this tournament that this is the way that it was going to happen. This was going to be the tournament where we were going to get, we're landing and then we're going to get like their biggest bag possible. I don't know why this is it's not wanting to focus very well here. So what we basically did is what we were doing is we were focusing more on those points. So we were definitely looking at main lake points, but what we were looking for was main lake points that had rock on them. So if we could find a main lake point that was pretty shallow, that came out, that had rock on it, that seemed to be like the primary feeding table that these bass were at. And anytime you found these points, these long, shallow points, with that rock on it, you found the bass. You basically found the shad, and then the bass were feeding on the shad. And we were catching these giant fish on spooks. So we throw the spook out there. It was a bone color. I'll put a picture on here for you guys so you can see it. But we throw the spook out there, just walk along, and they would explode on it. And we caught a lot of fish doing that. And then the other thing we were also catching fish on was just a shaky head. So I caught a pretty decent sized one with a shaky head Magnum trick worm, which you'll see a picture here of the fish. It ended up being like 6'6", so it's very decent sized fish. But other than that, the shaky head really wasn't working very well. We did catch a few on the shaky head brush hog during pre-fishing right before on Friday, and then I also had caught some earlier on the weekend before. So the baby brush hog seems to be coming up, and the worm seems to be going down. But biggest fish of this whole entire trip was actually caught on the shaky head, not the walking baits, but total weight. The walking baits smoked the shaking heads in regards to the quality of fish that we were getting and the amount of bites that we were getting. So the pattern down on Richland Chambers for sure right now is get out on those main lake rocky points, throw those walking baits, those spooks and things like that, and you are going to have a heyday. Now, if it's super windy, this is where we might get in trouble. So here's what happened to us. The wind was always coming from the southeast or the southwest every time we went and pre-fished it. And I knew it. I knew in the back of my head that that could change, especially being that it's fall and we have a lot of these fronts that come in from the north side, and we could easily get hit with a new front or large north wind, something like that could destroy us or actually just totally blow out our whole area to be able to fish. And so as we were pre-fishing, you'll see here on the map, I don't want to show you exactly where we were fishing, but this is the area that we really were concentrated on. This is the area that we were catching those huge bags out of, this whole entire area here, just all around there. That is where we were catching all of those fish. So what we decided to do in the 2 or 3 days of pre-fishing that we had up until the tournament was that we were going to leave those spots alone, and we were going to really focus on all the other areas in the lake to see if we could find some places on the northern side where if there were to be a north wind, we would be protected. And so we went up there, we checked those spots, we spent some time on those spots, probably not as much time as we spent on the southern spots, obviously because the southern spots were good. But we went to the northern spots and never really found anything good up there. We found one spot that produced a really big fish for me on a walking bait, and then a couple other fish for landed as well. So we were confident in that spot on the north, but really we had one spot on the north, and then we had like 7 or 8 spots on the south end. So super confident going into it, probably way more confident than we needed to be. So we get into the tournament. Let's talk about Friday, basically. Friday was the day before the tournament. There was a huge storm that was brewing, and it was going to be blowing in northwest winds. So we got out there early in the morning. We got lucky. We were able to get out there before the front came in. So we were out there from about 7 a.m. to about 9:30 before the storms got there. And what we did is we basically took the hooks off our spooks, and Landon and Jackson were out there just throwing spooks, and you could see the fish just blowing up on these spooks. So we were like, yeah, we got the wind, the waves are kind of coming over the boat every once in a while. It's rough out there, but we're still getting these bites. We were confident. I was back there throwing a shaky head from the back of the boat with a brush hog, just popping it along. And I got a few bites as well. So we were confident that we were going to still have a really good tournament no matter what the wind was. In fact, we thought maybe because the wind would be blowing directly into those points, that it might even fire it up even more and get more bait in there for those bass. So, and bring more bass to us. So basically, we went out there on Saturday. The winds are blowing like crazy. I'm thinking it had to be like 15, 20. It was rough seas. And we go out there, 5 a.m. is the earliest you can get out there. We get out there the earliest you possibly can. We go and we set on our point for 2.5 hours. It was brutal. It was raining. It was windy. It was miserable. And we start fishing, and the first thing we catch is a hybrid. And then the next thing we catch is another hybrid. These hybrids are destroying our spooks. And I don't know if there were more hybrids there than there were bass, or if the hybrids were just more aggressive than the bass, or what the heck was going on. But the hybrids took over the spook. Basically, it knocked the spook out of play. If you were throwing the spook, you were catching hybrids. We were not catching any bass at all. We only caught one bass on a spook, and I'll tell you about it here in a minute. So we start off there throwing the spook, catching hybrids. We're like an hour in, and we're thinking we're in trouble. This was supposed to be our very best spot. This wind is brutal. The rain is brutal. What are we going to do? So we decide that we're going to go to the north side to that one spot, and just see if we can get a keeper in the boat. So we run up here to this north side. You guys will see it on the map. Start throwing a spook there, and immediately Jackson gets our first keeper. So we're like, okay, we're in good shape. So we stayed there for a little bit longer, never caught a single fish. Again, kind of a little bit of panic mode. Ran over to the boat ramp, and of course, when we did that, the trolling motor started to not work. So I started having trolling motor issues. That was interesting. Got that fixed. Then decided, hey, we're getting kind of deep in this tournament. We're getting a little bit worried. Let's just go back where we know there's fish at on those southern points with that wind blowing in there like crazy, and let's change it up a little bit. So Landon's suggestion was, let's go through drop shots. We've been throwing all this moving stuff and nothing seems to be working. Let's maybe just throw drop shots just to see if we can get a couple keepers. And so we went back to our first spot, threw the drop shot in there, got our second keeper. Jackson caught the second keeper. We caught a few more fish, but they were all too small. We couldn't keep them. So we left there, decided that, in the next place, by now it's like 1:30, something like that. There's only a little bit of time left. We were in desperation mode. We had the drop shots out. We thought, you know what, let's go to the spillway. If we go to the spillway, maybe I'll pick one up there, where there are two boats on the spillway, so we couldn't fish that. We wanted to go over and fish the point on the dam, and that one was taken. So our only resort was to take the last point that was available on the dam. So we pull up there, and immediately Jackson gets the third keeper. So we're thinking, all right, we've got like an hour left now, and we're catching fish. We may actually make it, at least get 5 keepers. We're not going to win this thing, but let's just get 5 fish in the boat. So they ended up catching probably 4 or 5 fish a piece. Every single one of them was too short. It was crazy. Of course, if we would have tried to size up, we wouldn't have got the bites. It was just a tough spot. So we ended up only having 3 keepers for the tournament. We weighed in with only 7 pounds, ended up taking 24th place in a tournament of 170 boats. So that shows you how tough it was. But still lost some ground on Angler of the Year, but they're still setting in 8th place, so still have a great shot at catching up, and hoping that they can pull through, maybe win one of these tournaments. Our next one's going to be on Ray Hubbard, so that's our home lake. So hopefully that'll do us good, and it'll give us an advantage there. So just kind of recap for you guys, just from lessons learned from that whole tournament, is that when you're fishing, don't get locked into a certain lure. We were definitely locked into 2 lures. We were locked into that spook because it was crazy and fun and just blew our minds. And then we were also locked into that shaky head because we knew the shaky head's always been good for us in the past, and that could be our go-to if things didn't work. The other thing that we didn't do is I don't think that we spent enough time on that North Shore. We knew those winds were going to come in. We weren't scared of the winds. We were actually planning on fishing in the winds. And now looking back at it, I'm thinking, man, we should have spent more time and found at least 2 or 3 more spots on that north bank just in case we got blown out like we did from those winds. The last thing is that we should have been throwing lipless crankbaits. I threw some a little bit, but I didn't. I got so locked in that spook, I should have been throwing other things. We should have thrown the lipless crankbait. I heard that was a good bite that day. That's where most of those bags were being caught. So I'm sure that was good. And then chatterbaits were working somewhere as well, from what I heard. So overall, though, if you don't have 20 to 25 mile an hour northwest winds, I say go down to that south bank. I'll show you another picture here. Focus on those points that are down there. Throw those walking baits basically all day long. It doesn't matter if it's morning or evening or whenever it is, just throw them all day long, and you're going to have fun. And if you don't catch any bass, you're going to catch some giant hybrids. So it's just going to be fun all the way around. So anyways, guys, I hope that helps you. Hopefully it helps you when you're planning for your next tournament, to just kind of learn from some of the lessons that we have. Don't get stuck on that pattern that you found in pre-fishing and get so honed in on it that you're kind of closed-minded, and then you block yourself into just that, what you made available for you. So we've always tried to have multiple spots. We've just never paid too much attention to where they're at. I think this is a unique lake because all the spots we had were on a particular bank line, like a really huge bank line, but they were all on that bank line. And that's pretty unique for most of the spots that we find, but it definitely taught me something that I can put in my bag for next time to make sure that I don't get caught in that situation in another tournament. So anyways, guys, hope that helps. Make sure to go out and check out our website, simplisticfishing.com, and make sure to go out to Omnia Fishing and check out that. They are an awesome tackle store online, and they are sponsored, or they have sponsored our channel. So definitely use that link below to go out and check them out. You get free shipping. If you're a premium member, you get credits back to your account. It's good stuff. Definitely go check them out. Make sure you hit that link that I sent so they know that I sent you over there. And until next time, guys, I hope you catch your PB. Take it easy.